What happens to love when it crumbles under the weight of betrayal? Does it vanish completely, or does it linger, like a scar that aches whenever the weather changes? Violet sat at her worn kitchen table, her eyes scanning the custody papers spread out before her. The clock on the wall ticked relentlessly, marking time she didn't feel she had. Across from her, Jacob was busy with his crayons, his small hands gripping a green one as he carefully outlined the shape of a heart. It was his favorite thing to draw lately, hearts. Big ones, small ones, sometimes colored in with wild patterns. But tonight, Violet couldn't bring herself to praise his artwork. Her mind wandered back to a time when she believed hearts were unbreakable. That was before the divorce, before her life had been split into before and after. Now even the word divorce felt like a sharp edge, slicing through any hope she had of feeling whole again. Jacob looked up, his innocent eyes catching hers. "Mommy, are you sad again?" The question hit her harder than she expected, but Violet mustered a smile. "No, sweetheart, just tired." Jacob nodded, returning to his drawing with the kind of focus only a 6-year-old could have. He didn't know about the battles she fought daily, the court hearings, the endless arguments with his father's lawyer, the nights spent wondering if she was making the right choices for him. He didn't know how the fear of failing him gnawed at her every moment. When a text pinged on her phone, Violet instinctively grabbed it, hoping for news from her attorney. Instead, it was a message from her best friend, Claire. "Community picnic this Saturday. You need to come. It'll be good for Jacoband for you. No excuses." Violet sighed, setting the phone down. The thought of mingling with cheerful families and their picture-perfect lives was more than she could bear. Still, Jacob deserved a day outside, and deep down, Violet knew she couldn't keep hiding forever. As she stared at Jacob's newest heart, a flicker of something stirred in her. Not hope exactly, but a faint whisper of possibility. And yet, could she even allow herself to hope when her life was still tangled in the mess of her divorce? Saturday came with a warm breeze and a sky that promised nothing but blue. Despite herself, Violet found a small spark of relief as Jacob sprinted across the grass toward the playground, his laughter rising above the hum of the picnic crowd. She hovered near the edge of the field, clutching a lukewarm cup of coffee and scanning the scene with wary eyes. Parents were sprawled on picnic blankets, chatting in small clusters. Children darted between tables, stacked with potluck dishes, their laughter bubbling up like champagne. It all looked so normal. And yet, Violet felt like an outsider, as if the word divorce were stamped on her forehead, visible for everyone to see. "First time at one of these?" The voice startled her, low and steady, coming from just over her shoulder. She turned to find a man standing beside her. He held a plate of potato salad and wore an easy, disarming smile. Yeah," Violet said, shifting awkwardly. "I guess it shows." "A little," he admitted, his smile widening. "I'm Ryan, by the way. My daughter Lily is over there making a sandcastle out of dirt." Violet followed his gaze to a curly-haired girl crouched beside Jacob, who was enthusiastically adding sticks to her castle. She chuckled despite herself. "That's my son Jacob. He has a thing for creative construction. Looks like they're hitting it off," Ryan said, glancing back at her. "Kids have a way of skipping the awkward small talk, don't they?" Violet nodded, feeling a sudden tug of envy for their simplicity. If only it were that easy for adults. But with the weight of her divorce and everything that came with it, nothing felt simple anymore. As they talked, Violet found herself lowering her guard, just slightly. Ryan had a way of making conversation feel effortless, weaving in light jokes that made her laugh before she even realized she wanted to. He mentioned his own divorce, not as a heavy confession but as a quiet truth, and that honesty struck a chord she hadn't felt in years. By the time Jacob came running back, his face flushed and beaming, Violet realized she hadn't checked her phone or her worries for nearly an hour. But as the picnic wound down and Ryan waved goodbye with Lily in tow, that familiar wall began to rise again. What was she doing, letting herself feel anything in the midst of this chaos? Could she really risk opening herself up again, knowing the pain that might follow? These thoughts lingered as she drove home, Jacob chattering happily in the back seat. Violet forced a smile as she glanced at him in the mirror, but her mind was elsewhere. Ryan had been kind, but kindness didn't erase the scars of her divorce. And if she wasn't careful, those scars might tear open again. The week after the picnic was a blur of routine work deadlines, Jacob's homework, and the endless legal emails tied to the divorce. Yet, despite her best efforts to keep things compartmentalized, Ryan lingered in Violet's mind, like a melody she couldn't quite shake. It wasn't just his easy smile, or the way he seemed to carry himself with quiet confidence. It was the way he talked about his divorce so openly, without bitterness. How did someone come out of something so painful and still find a way to be calm? Violet didn't know, and she told herself it didn't matter. Her focus had to stay on Jacob and shielding him from the fallout of her past mistakes. But Jacob, it seemed, had other plans. "Lily says we should have a playdate," Jacob announced one evening as he helped Violet fold laundry. His little hands worked clumsily at smoothing out a t-shirt before balling it up instead. "Can we, Mommy? She has a swing in her backyard." Violet froze for a second, her fingers tightening around a pair of socks. She hadn't even thought about the possibility of Ryan or his daughter becoming more involved in their lives. "We'll see," she said cautiously, knowing full well that "we'll see" was parental code for probably not. Jacob didn't seem to pick up on her hesitation. "She's really fun, and Mr. Ryan said he likes superheroes, just like me." Violet forced a smile, her heart sinking a little. She couldn't let Jacob get too attached. It wasn't fair to him or to herself. That evening, after Jacob went to bed, Violet called Claire. "You're overthinking this," Claire said bluntly. "It's just a playdate, Violet. You're not signing a contract." "I know that," Violet said, pacing the kitchen. "But it's not just the playdate, it's everything. I can't afford to get distracted right now. Jacob's already been through enough." "Violet, you've been through enough," Claire countered. "You deserve a little happiness, too." Violet sighed, leaning against the counter. Happiness. The word felt foreign, almost laughable, when her life still revolved around court hearings and custody battles. The call ended, but Claire's words lingered. That night, Violet lay awake in bed, replaying moments from the picnic, the way Ryan had made her laugh, the way Jacob had lit up around Lily. A part of her wanted to take the risk, but the larger part of her, the part shaped by the wounds of her divorce, whispered warnings she couldn't ignore. By Friday, Violet had caved to Jacob's relentless enthusiasm and agreed to the playdate. They met Ryan and Lily at the park again, a neutral ground that felt safer than someone's backyard. The kids ran off almost immediately, their laughter echoing through the trees. Violet watched them for a moment, her chest tightening with a mix of pride and apprehension. "You don't have to look so tense," Ryan said, taking a seat on the bench beside her. "They're kids, not secret agents." Violet laughed despite herself. "It's not them I'm worried about." Ryan tilted his head slightly, his gaze steady. "You mean us?" Her breath caught. "I don't know what you mean." "Yes, you do." His tone wasn't accusing, just calm and certain. "Violet, I get it. I've been there. After my divorce, I felt like every move I made was a gamble I couldn't afford to lose." His words struck a nerve, and Violet felt herself stiffen. "It's not just about me. Jacob comes first. I can't let anything there any muss with that." Ryan nodded, as though he expected her response. "That's exactly why you deserve to give yourself a break. You're a great mom, Violet, but you don't have to do everything alone." The sincerity in his voice was almost too much to bear. Violet turned away, focusing on Jacob and Lily as they climbed the jungle gym together. "I don't know if I can trust myself to get it right this time," she admitted quietly. Ryan didn't respond right away. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft. "Maybe it's not about getting it right. Maybe it's about letting yourself try." They sat in silence after that, watching the kids race toward the swings. Violet couldn't decide if Ryan's words were comforting or terrifying. By the time they left the park, Jacob was chattering happily about their next adventure, completely unaware of the storm brewing in his mother's heart. Violet smiled at him, but the doubts lingered. Could she really afford to take a chance again? And what if this time the cost was more than she was willing to pay? The following weeks blurred into a strange rhythm. Violet found herself exchanging casual texts with Ryan, mostly about the kids, what time they'd meet at the park, funny things Lily and Jacob had said, and the occasional meme that made her laugh harder than she wanted to admit. But with each interaction, a tug-of-war waged within her. One side pulled her closer, whispering that Ryan was different, that he wasn't like her ex-husband, that he understood what divorce could take from a person. The other side, the louder, harsher voice, warned her to stay guarded. She wasn't just risking her own heart. Jacob's happiness was on the line, too. It all came to a head one night as Violet sat on the couch, scrolling through her phone while Jacob slept. An old photo popped up in her memories, a picture of her and her ex, smiling at the camera during their honeymoon. She almost didn't recognize herself in it. The woman in the photo looked so sure, so blissfully unaware of the storm that lay ahead. Violet set the phone down, her chest tightening. Divorce had stripped away that naive version of herself, leaving behind someone more skeptical, more cautious, maybe too cautious. The sound of a text jolted her from her thoughts. It was from Ryan. "Lily says Jacob's her best friend. Thought you'd want to know. No pressure or anything, but we're hitting the ice cream shop this weekend if you two want to join." Violet stared at the message, her heart doing an uncomfortable little flip. She hesitated before typing back, "Thanks for the invite. I'll let you know." After she hit send, Violet leaned back on the couch, her mind spinning. Saying yes felt like opening a door she wasn't sure she could close again. But saying no felt lonely. The decision lingered in her mind until Saturday rolled around. The ice cream shop was bustling with families when Violet and Jacob arrived. Jacob practically dragged her inside, his excitement contagious. "There they are," Ryan called, waving them over. Lily grinned from ear to ear, holding a cone that was already dripping onto her hand. Jacob didn't waste a second, running to sit beside Lily and launching into an animated conversation about superheroes. Violet approached the table more slowly, her nerves humming. "Glad you could make it," Ryan said, standing to pull out a chair for her. "Thanks," Violet said, sitting down and smoothing her hands over her jeans. Ryan's presence was steady, grounding, even as her thoughts threatened to spiral. He didn't push, didn't make her feel cornered. Instead, he asked easy questions about Jacob's favorite hobbies, her work, and the best places to hike in the area. Violet found herself relaxing, bit by bit. There was something about Ryan's demeanor that made her want to trust him, even as her defenses screamed at her to keep her distance. Halfway through the visit, Jacob and Lily declared that they needed to check out the arcade next door. Violet hesitated, but Ryan smiled reassuringly. "It's all open and connected," he said. "We can still see them from here." Violet nodded reluctantly, watching as the kids darted away. The shop felt quieter without their chatter, and Violet was suddenly very aware of how close she and Ryan were sitting. "I've been meaning to ask," Ryan said, breaking the silence. "What's the hardest part for you?" Violet blinked. "The hardest part of what?" "Divorce." The word hung in the air, heavy and unflinching. Violet looked down at her half-finished cone, struggling to find an answer. "Everything," she said finally. "The guilt, the uncertainty, the feeling that no matter what I do, it's never enough." Ryan nodded, his expression softening. "Yeah, that about sums it up." For a moment they sat in mutual understanding, the kind that didn't need many words. "But," Ryan added quietly, "it doesn't have to stay that way. You know that, right?" Violet glanced at him, her defenses crumbling just a little more. "I want to believe that." Ryan smiled gently. "Then maybe you should." The kids returned moments later, laughing and begging for quarters for the claw machine. Violet handed Jacob a few coins, grateful for the distraction. But as they left the shop that afternoon, Ryan's words stayed with her. Maybe she could believe in something better. Maybe she could believe in him. Violet had been trying to avoid this moment for days, but avoidance had never been a solution, and deep down, she knew it. It was a chilly afternoon when she finally worked up the courage to send Ryan a text. "Can we meet? Just us. I need to talk." His reply came quickly. Of course. You okay? She wasn't, but she lied anyway. Yeah, I'll see you at the park. The park had always felt like neutral ground, a place where their kids could run free, and life felt lighter, even for a moment. But today, as Violet sat on the familiar bench waiting for Ryan, the weight of her decision pressed down on her like an anchor. Ryan arrived a few minutes later, a faint smile on his face. Hey, you look. He hesitated, searching for the right words. Tired. Violet let out a humorless laugh. That's one way to put it. He sat down beside her, his presence as steady as ever. But Violet didn't feel steady, not now. Ryan, she stopped herself, the words catching in her throat. How do you break something that hasn't even fully begun? He waited patiently, his gaze steady. Take your time. Violet drew in a shaky breath. You've been incredible. More than I ever could have expected. And Jacob adores you and Lily. Her voice faltered, and she looked away, unable to meet his eyes. But I can't do this. Ryan didn't respond right away. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm but tinged with sadness. Can't do what? This, she said, gesturing between them. I thought maybe I could. That I could take the risk, let myself believe in something good again. But I can't. The divorce, it took so much out of me, Ryan. I'm still putting myself back together. And I can't afford to let anyone in until I know I'm whole. Ryan leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Violet, no one's ever really whole. We're all just doing the best we can with what we've got. I know, she whispered. But I can't give you what you deserve, or what Jacob deserves. If this doesn't work out, her voice broke, and she shook her head. I can't survive that again, and I can't put Jacob through it either. Ryan sat back, his expression unreadable. For a moment, Violet thought he might argue, try to convince her to change her mind. But instead, he simply nodded. I get it, he said softly. I wish I didn't, but I do. The honesty in his voice made her chest ache. I care about you, Violet, Ryan continued. And I care about Jacob, but I won't push you. If this is what you need, he trailed off, his jaw tightening. Then I'll respect it. Violet felt a tear slip down her cheek, and she quickly wiped it away. Thank you, she whispered. They sat in silence for a while, the sounds of the park fading into the background. When Ryan finally stood, Violet looked up at him, trying to memorize the kindness in his eyes, the way he carried himself with quiet strength. Take care of yourself, Violet, he said. And Jacob? I will, she replied. You too. Ryan nodded, then turned and walked away, his figure growing smaller with each step. Violet stayed on the bench long after he left, the chill in the air seeping into her skin. She thought about Jacob, about how much he had enjoyed spending time with Lily and Ryan. She thought about the laughter, the brief moments when life had felt just a little lighter. But mostly, she thought about her own heart still fragile, still healing, still terrified of breaking all over again. Divorce had left its scars, and while she knew she couldn't let it define her forever, she also knew she wasn't ready to take the risk again. Not yet. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, Violet stood and walked back to her car, the ache in her chest both familiar and new. She had made her choice, and for now, it felt like the right one. But as she drove home, the quiet question lingered in her mind. How long would she let the pain of her past decide her future? She didn't have the answer. Not yet. And maybe, just maybe, that was okay.